In a serene corner of Pennsylvania, the charming town of Milton Robinson's abode, a 78-year-old retired widower, tells a story of solitude and tenacity. This town is not just his home. It's a canvas where he paints his life's values. Milton is a fixture at the town's city council meetings, where he consistently champions the cause of change in the city's motto and advocates for the addition of a new crosswalk near his residence. Following the council meeting, Milton returns to his house, where he tends to his daily chores. The ensuing morning paints a heartwarming picture as he steps into his garden. He waters his azaleas in the garden and feeds the birds. Shortly thereafter, his daughter, Denise, pays a visit to Milton's home, offering her support in managing his expenses and settling his bills. However, the conspicuous absence of his eldest son, Tim, leaves an unspoken tension that hints at a strained relationship between Milton and his son. After the end of her chores, Denise makes her way to the bathroom, only to be startled by an unexpected find: a can of green beans stowed away in the bathroom cabinet. This unexpected find triggers deep concern for her. Despite Milton's attempts to reassure her of his well-being, Denise insists that he consult a neurologist for a comprehensive examination. She has keenly observed that her father is starting to grapple with memory lapses, a fact that Milton vehemently disputes. Then Denise proceeded to her workplace, leaving Milton to while away the hours watching his beloved detective show and savoring his dinner. Following these evening rituals, he retired to bed. However, the tranquility of his night was disrupted when, out of nowhere, a brilliant light burst through the back window, accompanied by a deafening noise. Swiftly, Milton rushed to the backyard, only to be greeted by an astonishing sight: a UFO had crash-landed in his garden. Shaken and bewildered, he wasted no time and urgently dialed 911 to report the UFO's impact on his garden. Unfortunately, the operator dismissed his frantic call as a mere prank, cautioning him about potential fines before abruptly ending the call. Desperate for assistance, Milton then tried to call Denise, but to his disappointment, she remained unavailable. The following day, Milton makes his way to town for a council meeting, where he once again voices his two enduring grievances: the city's motto and the addition of a new crosswalk. Upon returning home, as the night unfolds, he is drawn to the backyard by an unusual sound. There, in the moonlight, he discovers an injured extraterrestrial being. Milton attempts to reach Denise once more, but she remains unavailable. Unaware of the fact that Denise's voicemail is full, Milton makes another attempt to call her, hoping for a connection, but to no avail. The next morning, Milton attends another town council meeting. During this session, Sandy introduces a fresh youth engagement initiative centered on fostering intergenerational dialogue. She elaborates on her strategy to disseminate informative posters throughout the city. When it's Milton's turn to speak, he follows his usual routine by raising his concerns about the city slogan and the crosswalk. However, he takes an unexpected turn by sharing the astonishing news of a UFO crash in his backyard, describing the damage to his birdhouse and flowers. Regrettably, his words are met with disbelief, and a heavy silence settles over the council. It's as though the council members regard the old man as if he has lost his mind. Following the meeting, Joyce sternly warns Milton not to raise such unconventional topics in future meetings, because they might undermine the credibility of elderly people's suggestions. In a kind gesture, Sandy offers to drive Milton home, even though Milton initially declines the offer. However, the distant rumble of thunder and the onset of rain persuade him to change his mind. Milton joins Sandy in her car, while Joyce observes the scene. As they arrive at Milton's house, Sandy leaves him with an assurance, reminding him that he can always rely on her for assistance. On that night, Milton's curiosity drives him to investigate the UFO, and he stumbles upon the alien, who has crawled out onto the patio. Initially, Milton assumes the extraterrestrial to be lifeless, but to his astonishment, the alien lifts its head and fixes a sorrowful gaze upon Milton, then faints once more. Milton tenderly drapes a blanket over the alien to provide warmth and places a glass of water within its reach. The following morning, the alien was seated on the floor near the back stairs, still wrapped in the blanket, appearing weak and in need of care. Milton warmly invites the stranger into his home. He's uncertain whether the stranger comprehends his words, so he resorts to nonverbal cues with hand gestures to encourage the being to enter. Noticing that the stranger has consumed the water, Milton fetches another glass and offers it. In an attempt to provide nourishment, he presents various foods, but it becomes evident that the alien has a preference for apples, as it's the only item the being chooses to eat. Subsequently, Milton makes his way to the store and purchases a batch of apples. At the checkout, he takes a moment to clarify to the cashier that these apples are intended for the alien being who is currently a guest in his home. The cashier, taken aback and surprised by the old man's unusual statement, begins to suspect that Milton may be experiencing hallucinations. Upon his return home, Milton settles onto the couch, engrossed in a magazine, seemingly oblivious to the news regarding the downed weather satellite. However, his tranquility is abruptly disrupted as he is stunned to find the extraterrestrial being standing right before him. This time, the stranger appears to be in much improved condition, having regained the ability to walk. With a newfound energy, Milton decides to offer the extraterrestrial visitor a comprehensive tour of his entire house. While touring the house, Milton reveals his deep admiration for the show CSI. He explains that the unpredictable nature of the series is what makes it his favorite, as you never know how it will end. He also proudly displays a cherished family photo to the alien and explains that his beloved wife passed away many years ago and his son, Tim, now resides in California. On that very day, Denise visits the store, where the cashier tells the remarkable story of her father's encounter. Intrigued, Denise rushes over to her father's house once more, reiterating her plea for him to undergo a medical examination. Her genuine concern for his well-being prompts Milton to agree to her suggestion. Following Denise's departure, the phone rings, and it's Sandy, seeking the use of a printer to produce some posters. Milton reluctantly agrees to host Sandy and provide the needed assistance. Sandy arrives at Milton's home and encounters the extraterrestrial being. Initially shocked and disbelieving, Sandy is astounded by the situation before her. Milton introduces the stranger to Sandy and showcases the garden spot where the UFO had crashed. Sandy elaborates to Milton, sharing that she's seen how movies often depict the mistreatment and handling of extraterrestrial beings. Out of concern for alien safety, she earnestly asks Milton to maintain the secrecy of the situation between them. After Sandy's departure, Joyce notices Sandy's car parked outside Milton's house, sparking her curiosity and prompting her to investigate the nature of their relationship. While the government continues its efforts to locate the fallen satellite, Milton and the extraterrestrial being spent the evening sitting together, watching television. The old man eventually drifts off to sleep on the couch. The next morning, as Milton awakens, he discovers that the alien has covered him with a blanket, displaying an act of kindness. To his delight, the stranger has also left behind a drawing for Milton, depicting the charming face of a cat. Deeply touched by this innocent and heartfelt gesture, Milton is profoundly impressed. As he proceeds with his morning routine, Milton observes the alien in the backyard, hard at work, repairing its spaceship. Filled with gratitude for the visitor's considerate actions and appreciation of the childlike artwork, Milton extends a warm invitation to the extraterrestrial for breakfast. Milton visits the doctor for an examination but encounters difficulty or makes a mistake during the tests. Meanwhile, Sandy engages in a conversation with the extraterrestrial, sharing her sadness about her daughter living on the West Coast with her friend, which means she won't see her daughter and only grandchild often. Following the medical tests and taking into account Milton's stories about aliens and spaceships, the doctor delivers a concerning diagnosis, indicating that Milton's condition is not good and his mental health is deteriorating. The doctor suggests that a nursing home might be the most suitable option given his condition. This news enrages Milton, leading to a heated argument with Denise before he storms out of the doctor's office. Milton suddenly returns. Sandy reads children's books to the extraterrestrial being. However, Sandy is anxious to inquire about the old man's well-being. But Milton is enraged and heads to his room. Sometime later, Milton shares his concerns about his daughter's desire to place him in a nursing home. He also opens up about his relationship with his son, expressing regret for not being a good father to him. The extraterrestrial being listens attentively to Milton's heartfelt words. After their conversation, Milton leaves a heartfelt voicemail for his son, discussing Denise and various aspects of life, hoping to bridge the emotional gap between them and convey his sentiments. The following day, Sandy brings a t-shirt for the extraterrestrial to ensure it is no longer naked. She suggests naming the alien Jules, but this suggestion angers Milton. He insists there is no need for names. However, due to Sandy's persistent urging, Milton eventually agrees to refer to the alien as Jules from that point forward. In the meantime, Joyce becomes aware of the government's $10,000 reward offer for information about the downed satellite. She decides to visit Milton's house, and as she looks through a window, she observes the extraterrestrial sitting with Sandy and Milton. Now Joyce is also privy to this secret and suggests naming the extraterrestrial Gary. Milton, however, remains cautious of Joyce and takes the extreme stance of suggesting that she should be killed to protect the secret. Sandy, on the other hand, insists that Joyce is part of their group. To emphasize the situation, Milton shows Joyce the drawing of a cat that Jules created. Joyce highlights the possibility that Jules' drawings may contain a hidden message, indicating that the alien is attempting to communicate through these cat drawings. Despite Joyce's assertion, Milton, however, remains skeptical of Joyce's words. The government persists in covertly monitoring citizens' phone lines to gather information about the UFO. One day, a concerned woman reports a man spending hours working with rockets in his backyard. In response, FBI agents are dispatched to investigate. However, upon arrival, they discover that the man is merely painting a homemade rocket and is not involved in any suspicious activity related to the fallen satellite. In the midst of these events, Joyce visits Milton's house to spend time with Jules and presents the extraterrestrial with a t-shirt. Simultaneously, Sandy receives a phone call from a young man who expressed interest after seeing her posters. While Joyce engages in conversation with the alien about his past and life in the big city, even discussing his involvement in concerts, Sandy talks with her young guest. Joyce begins singing to Jules, and the young man goes upstairs to use the bathroom. However, Sandy follows him upstairs and realizes that the young man is attempting to steal her jewelry. She confronts him, and the situation escalates to the point where Sandy threatens to call the police. The young man then physically attacks Sandy and attempts to strangle her. During these dramatic events, as Joyce continues singing at Milton's house, Jules suddenly experiences a telepathic connection, witnessing Sandy's perilous situation in her mind. In a moment of intense emotion, a deep blue color is imprinted on Jules' head, and the extraterrestrial being telepathically causes the young man's head to explode. This incident raises suspicions among the authorities, and they question Sandy about the events that transpired. Sandy explains that the young man had been choking her, and then, suddenly, his head exploded. When asked if there were any unusual changes leading up to this, Sandy denies any prior warning or alterations in the situation. At this point, she realizes that Jules must have been involved somehow. Sandy rushes to Milton's house and hugs Jules. In a three-person conversation, they discuss recent events and their consequences, while considering the peculiar situation they are facing. Sandy emphasizes that Jules can pose a significant threat to those with malicious intentions. Simultaneously, the perplexed government agents, unable to comprehend the circumstances surrounding the young man's head exploding, make the decision to shadow Sandy. In another development, Denise intercepts Milton near the store and inquires about the apples he purchased. Milton, however, remains silent and departs. Later, during a lunch gathering at Milton's residence, Sandy detects an unusual odor. Investigating, they discover a dead cat in the backyard, brought there by Jules. They are certain that Jules did not kill the cat, as it bears a tire mark and is unnaturally spread out. Jules presents them with a new painting depicting only 6 cats. It finally becomes clear to them that the alien requires 7 cats for a specific purpose. Milton contacts Denise, as she is a veterinarian, and inquires about the protocol for handling deceased cats. He specifically asks whether they are disposed of by putting them directly in the trash. Denise, rather perplexed by the unusual query, becomes more interested in what prompts his question, given that her father doesn't own any cats. Eventually, Milton decides to hang up, ending the conversation. Sandy and Milton embark on a slow drive through town, searching for deceased cats. Meanwhile, the authorities remain suspicious about the inexplicable incident involving the young man. With the assumption that authorities might discover something, they begin tracking Sandy. While driving, Milton inquires with Sandy about what happened to her husband. She shares that it all began with minor issues, like forgetfulness and difficulty recalling words. In the midst of their conversation, Milton requests Sandy to halt the car to collect a dead cat they spot by the roadside. The authorities observing them remain perplexed, uncertain about why Sandy and Milton are on the hunt for deceased cat. They manage to locate 2 cats, and Joyce commits to finding the rest. Meanwhile, the FBI continues its surveillance of Milton's relatives, intercepting private conversations. In one instance, they overhear Denise conversing with her brother about Milton's peculiar actions and her discussions regarding the alien and UFO. In the following, Joyce manages to gather 3 more cats, leaving only 1 more to find. While they are in the middle of this endeavor, law enforcement agents arrive at the door. Panicking, they refrain from opening the door and attempt to conceal themselves. The agents eventually depart, prompting Sandy, Milton, and Joyce to realize the need for a quicker resolution. During this moment, Milton makes a comment about Joyce's 14-year-old cat, describing it as unable to walk and afflicted with blindness and deafness. Joyce interprets this remark as an insult and retreats to his car. Shortly thereafter, Sandy approaches Joyce and extends an apology, advising him not to hold Milton accountable for his words. However, Joyce's perspective changed, and she believes that euthanizing the cat is the best course of action to minimize its suffering. At Milton's residence, Joyce embraces his cat, and as Jules's head takes on a blue hue, he gently lulls the cat to sleep. Following this, they gather the 7 deceased cats and place them under a gleaming silver cloth. To their amazement, the cats merge into an oval-shaped red gem, which serves as fuel for the spaceship. Jules then integrates this gem into the UFO. With the UFO successfully tested and ready for flight, the government agents manage to identify it. As the time for their farewell approaches, Joyce presents Jules with a snow globe containing a miniature cityscape. Sandy offers a sweater she has knitted, and Milton provides a photograph of himself to help the stranger remember his appearance. As Jules prepares to depart, he extends his hand in a manner reminiscent of how Milton initially invited the stranger into his house. But this time, Jules requests Milton to accompany him. Just as Milton decides to go with Jules, the house phone rings, and his daughter, Denise, expresses regret. She offers to meet for lunch on Saturday and mentions that she's also arranged to cut Milton's hair. The phone hangs up. In the midst of these events, Milton notices the presence of government agents and quickly makes his escape. The government agents arrive at his residence and forcibly enter the house by breaking down the door. Meanwhile, Joyce, Milton, and Sandy board the UFO and successfully evade the pursuing agents. After a few moments, the spaceship's doors open, revealing a location filled with massive rocks. Initially, they believe they've been transported to another planet, but Sandy checks her cell phone and notices it still has a signal, and Joyce points out a trash, indicating they are still on Earth. Kneeling before the alien, Milton communicates that he's undoubtedly thrilled at the prospect of journeying to another planet with Jules. However, he has changed his mind and decided to stay on Earth. Jules enters the UFO, and they bid him a fond farewell. A few days later, the trio gathers at Milton's house, pondering whether Jules will still remember them. Milton remains silent, but Sandy maintains her belief that Jules has not forgotten. During the night, as Milton watches television, a sudden light appears behind the window, signifying Jules' return.